Are you ready to untangle from your past, recover from heartbreak, and revive your life? This is Soul CPR with your host, Ann Papayotti. We've all had soul-crushing experiences and lost ourselves in our pain, but there is a way out. On this podcast, Amazon best-selling author, award-winning life coach, and advice columnist Ann Papayotti helps us navigate the path from heartbreak to healing. So now, please welcome the host of Soul CPR, Ann Papayotti.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here. And, this past week, I have to say I had the most amazing time visiting Montreal, where my family and I resided from 2005 to 2019. And I surprised my former Point Claire Zumba class, had coffees with friends, dinner with neighbors, and I was the featured speaker at a fundraising event for the West Island Women's Center, where I reconnected with many who've been participants in my courses and support groups, and one even who made my first retreat last fall. So I met even some people for the very first time with whom I've only met virtually over these past 4 years as clients, and while still leading separation and divorce supports for the group, for the center over Zoom. And so it's people asking, what's it like when you've only worked with people virtually and then you meet them in person? And I have to say, it was kind of like seeing an old friend for the first time in a very long time, because the connection was so strong from the depth of our conversations and the time that we've spent together. And so it was a wonderful evening of sharing and shifting, I'm going to say, for some who were inspired to do so. And all this was before heading up to the Lower Laurentians with my Montreal Book Club friends to a lovely cottage owned by one of them on Lake Hughes for a weekend of celebrating birthdays. We prepared meals together, caught up on our personal lives, played games, danced, laughed, and sat on the dock admiring the northern lights, which put on a spectacular and colorful show for us. And then we all packed up on Sunday morning, which was Mother's Day, and headed back home to the appreciation of our families. And it just took me a little longer, of course, because I had to catch a flight to Dallas by way of Detroit. And as I was contemplating really what I wanted to talk to you about today, I had many thoughts race through my mind. For one, I could share what I spoke about at the fundraiser, but something kept telling me instead to speak about the importance of play in our lives. I just had this amazing weekend of playing and laughing and connecting. And what came to me was, how do we maintain a life of balance and prevent burnout? And play will come into play as one of the answers today. With it being Mental Health Awareness Month, it is something to talk about out loud. So let's begin by defining burnout, shall we? It isn't just feeling tired or stressed. It is a state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion, often caused by prolonged stress, chronic stress, shall we say, and overwork. And according to the American Psychological Association, there's a dictionary of psychology, and burnout there is defined as physical, emotional, or mental exhaustion accompanied by decreased motivation, lowered performance, negative attitudes. And those are usually directed towards oneself and others. And I would even go so far as to add towards circumstances of life. And so when we think about burnout as associated with our work, our career, our jobs, that is typically where we think, right? That's burnout. Oh, that's overwork. But it can also occur in other areas of life. For example, in parenting or in caretaking or even in our intimate relationships. And according to an article in Psychology Today, burnout is not just a result of juggling too many tasks and working too many hours, but it's also when a person is not in control of how a job is carried out, or when a person is expected to work toward a goal that doesn't resonate with them, or when there's a lack of support for the work they are doing, or when there's a conflict of values, or with a conflict with their very sense of self. So burnout can begin to feel like more than mental and physical exhaustion. It can truly become depression and apathy and cynicism. And as usual, physical health problems follow mental health problems, and people tend to report symptoms like headaches, fatigue, sleep disturbances, heartburn, other gastrointestinal symptoms, as well as an increased potential for alcohol, drug, or food. I'm going to use the word abuse. Yes, we abuse food, and those who binge eat know exactly what I'm talking about, and that's something I certainly have done. When it comes to jobs, burnout is at an all-time high in corporate America, according to research, and pressure to perform, catabolic or poor leadership, or a bad boss, if you will, are the most commonly reported sources of stress, then leading to burnout. So again, that's what we typically think of, right? Is work, jobs when it comes to burnout. But what about those non-work, outside the home related uh, relationships that I mentioned? Parenting, caretaking. Let's start with parenting. People often keep this feeling of burnout to themselves because they feel what? Like a bad parent. Well, that self-critical labeling keeps them quiet and then stuck in their patterns of painful burnout. Parenting can be, let's just call it what it is, both rewarding and challenging. And for those who have a child with special needs, it can be also incredibly demanding on you mentally and physically. And when there isn't adequate support, I've seen the best of parents burn out and end up in need of even hospitalization to come back from the very toll that this has taken on them. And the same, I would say, goes for caretaking, whether it be for elders or even of dependents who are now adult children. And it's normal to feel angry and frustrated and helpless all at the same time. But guess what? Guilt comes in and keeps people from talking about and getting the help they need for themselves. Before what? Before burnout. And then there's burnout even in partnerships, intimate relationships. Now, this being my field of expertise, let's face it, some I hear about often are in relationships where you feel you're walking on eggshells just to keep the peace, or there's perhaps constant conflict and chaos, or there's simply no emotional connection remaining due to lack of communication, lack of support, and then maybe feelings of resistance and blame have built mountains or created chasms between you. So, whatever the situation may be, I would ask you to ask yourself, have you ever experienced burnout? Has someone you know and loved experienced it? It isn't pretty to witness or to experience firsthand. It really isn't. And, would you recognize the warning signs? Do you know what they are? And would you then do something preventative? Would you do that? I know people who have and people who have not, until that actual fire of burnout was so fully extinguished, they're so burnout that the coming back was quite a long journey. So, burnout versus stress. By definition, burnout is that extended period of stress, that chronic stress that feels as though it cannot be ameliorated. If stress is short lived or kind of tied to a specific goal, that's not bad. We've heard of performance stress, it can be good for us. It's most likely not harmful. But if stress feels never ending and it comes with feelings that are like the hopelessness, for instance, or apathy creeps in, or emptiness, it may be indicative of a burnout. So I think this is a good time for us to take our first break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about recognizing the signs of burnout, because that is the key to becoming proactive and mitigating that severe negative impact on our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. So don't go far, and we'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back, everyone. It's great to be with you today and have you with me. And today we are talking about burnout. And recognizing burnout is key to actually getting in front of it and being proactive and being able to turn it around before it gets too far. So I want to talk, I chose this subject because it is Mental Health Awareness Month, as you saw from the last show, if you're able to watch it with us. And I really find it imperative to bring awareness to this. And so all my topics this month will have something to do with our mental health and maintaining it. And burnout is something that I hear so frequent from clients and from members of support groups, that they feel like they're moving towards if they're not already there. So this was an important topic I felt for us to talk about. So recognizing the signs are key. This is just a list that I came up with from listening to people. When you no longer feel like yourself, when normal stress becomes unmanageable, when returning to balance becomes more and more difficult with your usual strategies, whatever your strategies are. When you start detaching from the people, places, and things you truly care about, isolating perhaps, when you struggle to concentrate, or when you lose motivation and focus to complete tasks, when you experience mood swings and are frequently irritable and short-tempered and have a general feeling of overwhelm, when you're physically drained and seem to get sick often, you are probably headed for burnout. It's time to take action and turn it around. Now, whether you're recognizing these symptoms of burnout as related to work or home, there are options for you to start considering before you get to that full flames out. Okay. All right. So standing up or speaking up, I've got 5 for you, 5 options for you to consider. Standing up or speaking up to try to influence or create change. Now, people tend to resist this. Why? Because it feels like conflict to speak up or stand up for yourself. But conflict doesn't have to be rude or ugly. So, what needs to change to improve the environment that is draining you? And what can you say to try to affect change? Does there need to be a restructuring at work? That might be your first strategy. Speaking up about your concerns, offering an idea to restructure, whether this is work or at home. Speaking up or standing up. Letting someone know it's too much or it's not working well for you. All right, the second option I would have you consider, simply boundaries. Simply boundaries. Simply and boundaries don't often go hand in hand, those 2 words for many people. But this is the key to creating work-life balance. I call it all-life balance, but we often read it as work-life balance. This is another way to influence or affect change. And no, the word no is the biggest boundary you'll ever have. Learn to use it. No to new tasks, okay? To reduce your workload, or scheduling those regular breaks, learning how to manage your time well, starting and stopping at set times, minimizing multitasking. It's been proven multitasking is not more effective. So literally blocking time for certain tasks to create what you need to create within that time frame is much more effective. Adjusting hours, delegating. How many of us are control freaks and we don't share the load? So sharing the workload, delegating, outsourcing, allowing others to become responsible where they can, whether that's our children, our partners, or our colleagues. Okay, so boundaries, learning boundaries. And if that's not something that you're good at, maybe that's a gap that needs to be filled. Maybe that's something that needs to be learned. Maybe that's the course you need to take, boundaries. Or maybe that's what you need to work on with your therapist or coach. All right. And learning to use downtime. That's a boundary. Boundaries are for us, that we communicate to others. So scheduling that downtime for yourself. There you go. My third option before burnout is take a break, to rest, to revitalize yourself, right? And this is that time for self-care. It is the number one thing to fight burnout. Self-care. It's proven in research, and self-care looks different for everyone. So I'm not going to tell you what to do for you, but some of the proven strategies are exercise. Perhaps it's eating healthy, mindfulness in general, whether it's mindful eating, mindful meditation, exercise, practicing self-compassion. What would that look like for you? I don't know. Number 4, my favorite, play. What I did this weekend when we went to the cottage. Play is vital for preventing burnout because it serves as sort of a natural counterbalance to the stresses and demands of work or other responsibilities. If you've been listening to my show, you know that Zumba is my happy hour. Yes, it's also my exercise. I'm getting a double dose here of different things, but it feels like play to me. It's also connection to other people. And we all know the importance of play for early childhood development, don't we? Or do we? My friend Pat and I were discussing it this weekend, and she had shared an article with me that she was reading, and I found another recently that's published by Florida Atlantic University sharing very similar results. And both report that anxiety and depression among school-aged children and teens in the U.S. are at an all-time high. And sadly, in 2021, child and adolescent mental health was declared a national emergency. A national emergency. And although a variety of causes are thought to contribute to this decline in mental health, a new study by 3 prominent researchers specializing in child development points to lack of independent child's play. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, findings published in the Journal of Pediatrics suggest that the rise in mental health disorders is attributed to a decline over decades in opportunities for children and teens to play, roam, and engage in activities independent of direct oversight and control by adults. Although well-intended, adults' drive to guide and protect children and teens has deprived them of the independence they need for mental health, contributing to record levels of anxiety, depression, and suicide among young people. Now, what does this deprivation mean? It has kept them from the ability to engage in and determine a level of risk-taking and taking personal responsibility for it. Because we're always saying, don't do that, do this. We've refrained them from the ability to engage socially naturally. We tell them who, what, when, and where. And we've deprived them of the ability to resolve conflict on their own, among other things. But these are some of the things that point toward, they say, this decline. Our well-intended to keep them safe has prevented them from the abilities, these natural abilities to manifest for them. But here's why play is crucial for maintaining well-being and preventing burnout. Stress reduction. So, when we engage in playful activities, we as adults, and I imagine young adults as well, reduce stress levels by triggering the release of endorphins, the body's natural feel-good chemicals. And this helps alleviate that physical and emotional strain that accumulates from those prolonged periods of stress. This weekend, when I was with the girls up at the cottage, we actually we had an Olympics. We had an Olympics of all kinds of crazy things, from hula hooping to running through the cones, to putting on goggles, which limited our vision, over a crazy hat, mind you, to being able to toss balls into a bucket. We were on 2 teams, right? 2 birthday girls teams. So we were competing as well. And then from there we had to go, and I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud, but there was a tissue box with a man's necktie running through it. We tied it around our waist, and there was a ball in the tissue box, and we had to twerk to get the ball to bounce out of the box before we could grab the bubble wand, swing bubbles in the air, run back with our bubble wand and hand it off to the next teammate to start her part of the relay. So it was a lot of fun, too much laughter. I thought my face was going to be frozen in a permanent smile. But stress reduction, the body's natural feel-good chemicals and hormones. Play. I couldn't even think of my stress at that point. Another reason play is important, there's a restoration of energy. A restoration of energy. Play provides that break from routine and mundane tasks, and it allows us to just recharge both mentally and physically. So taking time for play can replenish energy levels, making it easier to tackle challenges and responsibilities, right? I don't know, when's the last time you played? See what it does for you. Is your stress reduced? Is your energy restored? And what about creativity? As a writer, sometimes I get writer's block and I need creativity. I need a source of creativity. Well, play encourages that. And I know that when I've gone to Zumba or I've done something fun, all of a sudden my creativity is sparked and I have new ideas. So play stimulates the imagination and promotes that innovative thinking. So what would be different for you if you allowed yourself to play? Would it lead to fresh perspectives and maybe even solutions to problems that you've been trying to solve? We talked about mood before, being affected by burnout and potential burnout. Well, play is known to improve mood and foster feelings of joy and amusement, excitement. So that laughter I mentioned earlier can certainly counteract feelings of negativity and cynicism that we mentioned are associated with burnout. And what about that social connection I mentioned? Many forms of play involve interaction with others, even the online gaming that we sometimes get a little frustrated with our teens for being so involved with, but often they are playing with others and there is some kind of social connection and interaction. But building and maintaining social connections through play does provide a sense of belonging, and we can create a support network even from that. So that can buffer against the effects of stress and burnout, certainly. Another thing play can do for us is enhance resilience. Uh, Resilience is a word we often hear when their times are tough, right? But regular play can foster psychological resilience, which resilience I like to call bounce back ability, which just means we can just recover more quickly from setbacks and adversity. So playful experience maybe helps us develop coping skills. Could we say that? Or helps us learn to cultivate that positive outlook, all which could help us avoid or come back from burnout. And lastly, I would say that play really just helps with that balance, that overall balance. And balance, I think, helps us, is most helped with perspective, the ability to put things in perspective. And when we can do that, we're more easily to always maintain that healthy balance between work and the rest of life and make time for things that bring us joy and fulfillment. So, what matters to you? What do you enjoy doing? What's fun for you? What's play for you? And figuring that out and then allowing yourself, or maybe even, shall we say, giving yourself permission to play might be something to put on your to-do list. So that's the anecdote, perhaps, to burnout and to today's fast-paced world. So let's take a break, and I'll come back with my fifth option, which is the one that's maybe most commonly in the news, and certainly as of late. So don't go far, and we'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back, everyone, to Soul CPR. I'm Ann Papayotti, and today we're talking about burnout. We've talked about 4 different options so far to help you before burnout, or when you recognize that stress is mounting up and it might be a little much, and what you can do to kind of counteract it. And, my 4 options that I see and that I help coach people into making sure that they have in their lives are things like being able to speak up and stand up in to affect change, maybe to restructure something in their job or in their home life, in their daily life. Sometimes it's asking for the help that you need. Sometimes it's allowing the help that you need. Boundaries is another one. And that one I find a lot of people struggle with. And the word no is the biggest boundary that you'll ever learn. Sometimes it's to reduce your workload. Sometimes it's structuring your time for yourself and communicating that to others. Taking a break is another one. To rest and to revitalize. And what does that look like for you? And making sure that that is also scheduled for you. Play, very vital and important to our overall well-being. And we've talked about that. And certainly we're seeing how lack of play or lack of unsupervised play, and I mean seriously outdoor, imaginative play, has hurt youth over decades of that. Well, the 5th option, and one that you hear about in the news quite often and really right now a hot topic, is quitting. Quitting is an option. There are many, many, many public examples. Simone Biles quit the Olympics, right? She did not quit gymnastics. We could say she took a break from the sport, but she quit the Olympics and shocked the world at that time. But she recognized that she was struggling with her mental health, hitting a burnout, and she quit. Some people would say Harry and Meghan quit the monarchy. Some people call it the firm for their reasons, right? So a lot of quitting. And the most recent high-profile news has been of the beauty pageant queens. Are you guys, aware of this? Have you been hearing about this? So Miss USA resigned due to what she describes as a toxic work environment. Remember what I said, the most common reasons to leave work? She said was negatively impacting her mental and physical well-being, including being diagnosed with anxiety, stress-related heart palpitations, full body shakes, loss of appetite, unintentional weight loss, sleep disturbances, hair loss, and more. And I think a lot of her complaints had to do with the director, right? So that boss thing that we mentioned earlier being one of the most common reasons. And then Miss Teen USA stepped down, saying her values no longer aligned with the organization. Another reason we said that burnout has been proven, because values don't align. Now, Maria, my sister-in-law, who was on the show last week, and I shared about our sister-in-law, whom we lost to suicide. And in discussing today's topic for the show, we couldn't help but wonder if in quitting her job, would it have saved her life? And Julia Keller, PhD and Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, wrote a book titled Quitting, A Life Strategy. Ms. Keller believes that quitting can absolutely be the option that could save your life. Her book shares the neuroscience that underlines our behavior and the cultural messages that drive our reluctance to throw in the towel. She says that sticking it out doesn't always pay off, and quitting can be an unexpected act of self-love. I picked up this book when I was at the airport. It just spoke to me. I had no idea that's what I would be speaking to you about today. And I still haven't read the whole book, but just enough of it to capture my attention. And Ms. Keller interviews a lot of people who have quit a lot of jobs, and she labels this a white flag movement. I quit. And many of the people in the book quit for various different reasons, but what they show is their success stories because they were willing to let go of something that wasn't good for them. And in working as a relationship coach, I do find that perseverance absolutely can be a sign of denial, which is something Ms. Keller says in her book. And I find many experience a conflict of values and won't quit trying to make their intimate relationship work because they hold commitment, loyalty, family, and faithfulness as high personal values. And then these become reasons and then eventually excuses to stay stuck in an unhealthy or toxic relationship. And that's when one may say it's complicated. And that's when fear then creeps in, the fear of letting go, the fear of quitting, the fear of change. And Miss Keller would go on to say, we've been indoctrinated into perseverance to keep trying, or we've failed. And I hear a lot of people saying, I do not want a failed marriage. I do not want to fail my children, my family, my church, whatever it may be. And so perseverance is the only way. When quitting may save their mental and physical well-being, and sometimes more. Food for thought. I highly recommend this book, and the book will be in the show notes. It is called Quitting. She has by Keller. Let's see. I don't recall the rest of it, but Dan will have it in the show notes for you. It is a remarkable read by Miss Keller. Now, many people will say or ask me, they'll say, it's not me, but I have a loved one who I believe is experiencing burnout. They're on the verge. And it's painful as well, to observe someone, to watch them, to feel helpless for them. And often we think we know the source of it, but we don't always know that. I recommend that you observe the behavior, whether it's the mood swing or the isolation or whatever it may be, and that's what you say. I see this or I hear that, and then ask them, what are you feeling? So state the observation, ask them what they're feeling, and then ask, what are they thinking that's creating that feeling? Because our thoughts create our feelings, and then our feelings drive that behavior that you're observing, that you're mentioning to them. So that way we approach them without judgment, right? When we observe what we see or hear, and then ask what they're feeling and what thought may have created that feeling. So this gives them the opportunity to open up to us, right? And for us to then practice empathetic listening. That's your role in this. Empathetic listening. And then perhaps the next step would be to encourage that self-care that we talked about. And then to offer to help, maybe with tasks or whatever they've revealed that you see could be delegated to you, if anything. Or just ask them what it is you can help with. All right? That is the main thing we can do to help someone. As Maria and I were speaking of our sister-in-law, Heather, whom we lost to suicide, we noted that it was her job, right? But it wasn't only her job. And when you think about what's the one drop in the cup that makes it spill over, you never know. There were other things in her personal life, her inability to have children. Again, we don't know what was the thing. There was some financial struggle. But what we do know that she was communicating was stress about her job. But she wouldn't quit. She didn't quit. So quitting is an option if you allow yourself, if you give yourself the permission to quit. And that is why we wonder if it may have saved her life. We're going to take our last break of the show now, and when we come back, some closing thoughts for today.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Mike Zorek, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorick, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorick has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Welcome back, everyone, to Soul CPR Healing Out Loud. I'm Ann Papayotti, and we are going to conclude today's show about burnout. But we were just last talking about quitting. You know, we've done a show about beliefs, the show I did with my co-author, Tracy McDonald, about beliefs. What are your beliefs about quitting? What are your beliefs about failing as related to quitting? About giving up? Were you taught to never quit once you started something? Whether it was a job, a marriage, a team, what was it? What are your beliefs? Are you willing to challenge those beliefs now? Do your beliefs keep you stuck? Do they empower you? Do they hold you back? Something to think about. I wanted to show you the book, Quitting, a Life Strategy, that I've been talking about by Julia Keller. And I do highly recommend this if you're looking to read stories from people who have had the, and I'm going to say, courage to quit. I was taught to not quit, and I don't begrudge my parents that lesson. I think it did teach me to push through and try harder, but I'm going to have to do some reflection and think, where has it kept me stuck? And I can tell you it did keep me in my first marriage. And I wouldn't say it was just my parents or my belief on that. I didn't want to disappoint others. I didn't want to disappoint people who attended my wedding. I did bought gifts, who had honored me. I didn't want to my church, my religion, my neighbors. There was a cultural aspect to about divorce. There was this whole belief system going on in my head, and part of it was about that word failure. I did not want to fail. And how did that impact my mental and physical well-being? Well, I can tell you, I knew at 3 months that it was not a healthy marriage. So I stayed 8 years. How did that impact my mental and physical well-being? I can tell you, I took a huge, huge hit. So how do our beliefs keep us stuck? I would love for you to take the insight and to think about, is quitting the right option for you? Remember, it's not the only option. There are other options. And I would certainly, I believe in my case, start with the others depending on the situation. So with this Mental Health Awareness Month, no change occurs without first awareness. So I'd encourage you to first become aware of burnout symptoms, notice what's happening in your life or your loved ones, and then take the appropriate action for you. We have resources for you. There's this book, of course, the Mental Health America will be in the show notes, as well as NAMI. We've used both of these before. The National Alliance of Mental Illness, all have resources. And I did bring up youth again, and there is a hotline there. If someone you know or love or someone listening needs that, please reach out. There's support. Pay attention. Mental health is something, it's still relatively new that we're all embracing, that Mental health is as important as physical health. I'd like to call it mental fitness. What are we doing for our mental fitness, right? How are we keeping it working and lifted and strengthened? How are you strengthening your mindset? Okay, so with that, today I appreciate your being here. And as we conclude this episode of Soul CPR, Healing Out Loud, remember that healing is not a linear journey. It is a process of profound transformation. So if today's stories resonated with you, please share this podcast with someone who might need a lifeline of their own. And I greatly appreciate if you subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts. And you can always connect with me on social media, and you'll find me on Facebook at Skyview Coaching and at Ann Papayotti on Instagram, LinkedIn, and X. Let me know your thoughts, your stories, and the topics you'd like to explore in future episodes. And until next time, may you find strength in your vulnerability and courage in your journey. I thank you for listening. Breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully.
This has been Soul CPR with host Ann Papayotti. Breathe life back into your spirit with each episode, where she and special guests explore the relationships that hurt us and discover that healing can only begin with you. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.